All right, good morning, y'all. It's John, and Bitcoin is continuing its roller coaster. That's to be expected with a highly volatile asset class like this. But I read a couple of really interesting articles this morning talking about Bitcoin and where it fits into, say, an investment strategy. But before we get into that, the bad news for Bitcoin continued over the weekend. Sunday, it dropped tremendously, let's just put it that way, putting its value 50% below its high of just a couple of months ago. It did start to recover as the Western world woke up. It did start to recover, clearing $36,000, and then last I just looked before recording this, it was over $37,000, but that's still about 40%, I guess, down from its peak. Now, the two articles I saw were pretty interesting, and I think they work very, very well together. The first is that Goldman Sachs has come out and said that Bitcoin is its own asset class. All right, I think that's interesting, adds a lot more robustness, perhaps, to its acceptance, and they actually say in that article that it is in the acceptance phase. It's in the adoption phase. People are still trying to figure it out and what to do with it. And I'm going to have a personal note here at the end of this about Bitcoin, so stay tuned for that. Then they did point out that Bitcoin acts like, well, it might be its own asset class, it acts like a penny stock. Highly volatile, small bits of news can send its valuation wildly fluctuating. The other article compares Bitcoin to gold in the 70s. And I found this really, really fascinating because I hadn't quite thought about it like this. So in the 70s, you had a great distrust of the government, runaway spending, and runaway inflation. Now, I think that the inflation rate through the 70s, the average was like 6.5, something like that, 6.9, whatever it was. But you had peaks where it got over 12%, and in the early 80s, you actually got up to, I think, 17% at one time. Now, fast forward, and what we've got now is a great distrust of government. We've got increased social spending being proposed by the Biden administration, tremendous deficits, no sense of fiscal responsibility, and the inflation rate is starting to finally raise. And so the inflation rate we've got right now is a little over 4% in the first part of the year, still better than the 70s, right? But above the historical average of 3 some odd percent. This is going to increase the prices of things, and that eats into traditional stock returns. So as I mentioned in other videos, what do people do when their stock returns are going to be affected is they leave for an asset class that will preserve the value. And that's what happened in the 70s. Now, leading up to the 70s, our U.S. government had a fixed price for an ounce of gold. It was $35. The gold was the standard for our currency, and Nixon abandoned that, and the price of gold immediately started to shoot up. And what you saw happen in a few years was it went up hundreds and hundreds of dollars before collapsing back down. And as you can see in this chart right here, it spiked, it dropped, and then basically held steady for a long time. If you look at that chart closely, you'll notice that the peaks of gold happen around recessions, around periods of really, really high interest. And so the point of this article, as I'm reading it, is that during mistrust of government, during high spending by the government, deficits with a rising inflation rate or financial uncertainty, Bitcoin is starting to act like gold, where people are moving to it as a hedge. Now, the end of the article had a fascinating point, which is that Warren Buffett warned about people moving into assets that don't do anything, right? You're not moving into a stock where a company is producing something and you can analyze how that company is doing, how the leadership's doing, how the sales are going to do based on other economic forces. It's a warning, at least an oblique warning about gold. It doesn't do anything, it just sits there. And so the only hope of somebody who buys an ounce of gold at a price is that somebody is going to want to pay more for it in the future. And that's exactly what Bitcoin is doing right now. It's not been widespread adopted in terms of using as a currency. So really, people are using it as a place to put money, hoping that somebody else will buy more later. Hopefully that the price will continue to go up, which is why you see, and I've done several videos on it, people who are predicting $140,000, $250,000, $500,000 per Bitcoin. To me, it's a bubble. But that is not quite a Ponzi scheme. That is not the end of the story. For Bitcoin to continue to grow and to continue its adoption as a currency, it has to work. And this weekend, I tried something. So I do have a little bit of Bitcoin. I'm not a huge investor into it. I don't do any mining of it anymore. But I do have a little bit of Bitcoin. And since Coinbase is going to be adopting Doge, and then I'm going to be able to move my Doge in there as well, I've decided to go ahead and get set up with Coinbase, now that they're public, and move my Bitcoin into there. It took over 6 hours for my Bitcoin to move from one wallet to another because of how slow it took for 6 validations to occur. If it's going to function as a currency, those type of transactions have to happen so much faster. I can't go to Subway, send them, $8, and then just sit around and wait for it to clear. I've read about other cryptos that are focusing on the speed of the transaction. And I found that interesting because the last time I really moved Bitcoin around, it was almost instantaneous. So as it's grown in popularity, as more and more people have put money into it, it has slowed down tremendously, which tells me, again, it's an asset class that people can move into, hoping that the value goes up. But where's its functionality? Where is its utility? Right now, I don't see it. Hey guys, I'm pouring into Coinbase right now. Excuse me, I'm pouring into cryptos right now. I'm really getting excited about them. I'm getting a lot more information about them. I'm moving just a tiny bit of money into it. But I want to know your opinion. Am I wrong? Am I missing something about Bitcoin? Specifically its use as a currency. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it below. And please, if you're new here, subscribe, click that little bell, get notifications, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps me with the YouTube algorithm, guys. I appreciate it, but let's see what Bitcoin does today.